Hey everybody, it's Apollo Ono. I just talked to Kara about why and how I became famous. And I hope that you watch it, and I'll see you soon.
Hi friends, it's Kara. Welcome back to Really Famous. Today you're going to get to know Apollo Ono. Yes, he is the most decorated US Winter Olympics athlete of all time. But today we're getting personal. We talked all about what happened after the Olympics, what he's been doing, and how he did a totally hard pivot, which is the name of one of his moves and also basically the theme of his life. And you're not going to believe what his father did when he was 15. I'm not even going to drop a hint. You just have to go hear it because it's really something else, and it helped shape his life. Yeah. So
Sure.
you're in Miami then, right? Is that where you are?
Right now I'm in Miami, but our team is in San Francisco. So I'm like LA. I spend most of my time in Florida, but I bounce between Florida, New York, San Francisco, Los Angeles. But most of my time spent here.
Okay, gotcha. So you have a new book coming out, so that's really cool. I have to tell you, so I'm interested in all the topics that you cover. So I was a therapist before I did all of this. So
Cool.
I have that. I'm very interested in that whole human psychology thing. So yeah, let's talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, so the last time we spoke, I had already been writing a book. I didn't have the name yet, but I had been writing kind of my musings and my thoughts around this loss of identity, reinvention aspect, and challenge that many people go through, particularly Olympic athletes and people of the military who come back home and they feel very alien and foreign to their home environment. Um, for me, I retired in 2010 away from my love and my first true passion, which taught me everything and gave me everything and showed me the ropes and had the guardrails. And then, like this, when I decided to retire, I had my own great divorce. And that great divorce was effectively telling me that, no matter what you do, you can't come back to me. I found someone younger, more attractive, better story, etc. And so there was this very visceral reality that I had to deal with. Who do I want to become? What direction do I want to go down? Where do I want to spend my time? What am I good at? What am I not good at? All the questions that I had never asked before, simply because I was doing something my entire life. And that's what I felt my purpose was dialed into. And so I began anew. I had to pour the cup out of all the knowledge that I thought that I had. And by the way, whenever I thought that I had enough knowledge, I was like slapped across the face by life. And it was like, no, you are like a baby, time to begin new, brand new. And so I began this quest of trying to become an entrepreneur and a business person. And overall, it was just this fascinating journey, and it has been, of establishing like a set of mental models and routines in order to counteract a preconditioned self that is always trying to bring me back to safety. And safety is comfortable routine, the blueprint for success of what used
Mhm.
to work, etc. And I've always been one to kind of go against the grain, so to speak. And so, along writing this book and this journey, hard pivot, began this fascination around the psychological process of how we deal with our own inner traumas, micro traumas, experiences throughout life, and how they show themselves in various different forms and ways when we're pursuing our own dreams. And I found so many similarities of people who had gone down the same path that I had and did not come to terms with their reality or their self or acceptance and self love and all these types of things that I talk about in this book around trying to develop some core principles in which we can guide ourselves by and through in order to be our best self, in order to um, just effectively trying to figure out what is the best way for me as an individual to both embrace change, find purpose, and show up fully, consistently, every day,
Yeah.
regardless of outcome. And that's what this book is really all about.
So perfect for right now. This is exactly what so many people need, I think, because everybody has had to pivot. Everything is changing in the whole world. So I do think it's perfect timing, but you were already working on that before everything kicked in, huh?
Yeah, I was working on it. I've actually been working on this book for like a little over 3.5 years now.
Okay.
And a lot of it's just like basically journal entries, right? That I've been talking to myself and talking through, and some of the exercises that have helped me. And it's really not like a tactical toolkit for people who are looking at reinventing themselves. Instead, it is an open book, and it's a short, fat, you can read this in a weekend, right? And it's a book that really is like transparent around here's some of the struggles around me as an individual, what I have struggled with, and people who don't see behind the curtain of the Olympic accolades, of the trauma and the prison that I lived between my own 2 years for many, many years. Now, luckily, I used the levers of pain and insecurity and self doubt and fears of failure to my advantage to metabolize those types of emotions as I skyrocketed towards my goal. But oftentimes in life, there's a short term window in which that actually works. And it's also not sustainable. And oftentimes it can be quite toxic internally while we lean on some of those levers. And that's what I found for myself.
Okay. We need to get into all of that because you said a lot of words that interested me. So, right, let's go behind the curtain because you're right. It looks like one thing to somebody, to everybody just kind of sees this, oh my God, it's so aspirational and look at you as such a success. And one in a million gets to actually make it to where you were and be so successful when you made it to the Olympics over and over again, winning so many medals. And so, what behind the scenes, what was going on? What were the struggles? So you said self-doubt, right? I think fear of failure was another thing that I read you said when I was doing a little research. So give me an example of the self-doubt. When would it creep up and how would it impact your life back then?
When I was competing, it was every day. There was always the thoughts of you're not good enough. You're genetically not designed the same way other athletes are. Your time is over. Your peak has already passed. Your best is in the past, and there's nothing you can do about it. There's others that like maybe you're just not hungry enough. You just don't have it, right? Like all these negative voices that are telling you that you can't. I heard them often. Through training, I got very good at quieting those voices, and not even quieting, but more importantly, learning to hear them and then allow them to run through. So your mind is like a river of thought, right? You get thousands and thousands of thoughts per day. So instead of allowing one of those thoughts or two of those thoughts to hijack your entire trajectory of how your day is supposed to go or you want to go, you hear the thought, it's natural, and then you let the thought go and it's on to the next one. And that's a hard practice to engage with, but it was really beneficial. Now, there are times in which listening to that voice can be a driving factor, right? And sometimes everyone's different, right? Some people have and respond differently when they get like negative reinforcement. They somehow respond really well, right? I mean, Michael Jordan was one of those people where he would almost like make up scenarios with people, and he would take it very personal as if they did something wrong to him because that's what helped him really hone in and focus. That doesn't work for everyone. Everyone operates in different ways. So like that was one component. There's another component of just fears of failure. And, that stems way back into my childhood around being in a single parent household. My father effectively telling me time and time again that there was nothing that I couldn't accomplish. And when I got second or third or didn't hit the podium, still supporting me, but kind of taking me aside and saying, that's great. And I love you. Let's focus on how we can get better for the next time. So it's this, it's almost like this Japanese influence of it's never attainable. It's never good enough, right? It's always like a little bit more to go. And it's amazing in some aspects, right? That like pursuit of perfectionism that is impossible, but it doesn't allow you sometimes to be fully present with yourself. And I think that's where throughout this process, I've really learned to kind of slow down and be present.
Yeah, so interesting. Okay, so you were raised by your father alone, right? Okay. And so was this specific to the sport that when he was telling you that you can do better, you can, do the best that you can do anything, or was this
It was just
with respect to everything?
everything, everything. Yeah. My
That was
dad, my dad
what
was the type
else?
person. He was school, academics, everything. I mean, everything was just all about like, you can always adapt and do better. And to give you an example, right? Apollo, you're not genetically designed for roller skating to be a roller speed skater. I'm a single parent and I don't have time to take you to practice. Well, we got to find the time. So you're 12 years old. I'm going to wake you up at 3:30 in the morning and I'm going to take you to empty school and church parking lots. And I'm going to put and tape a miner's light to your helmet and you're going to skate around before school at like 12, 13, 14 years old. Like that's like people think you're crazy today, right? So like that level of dedication, I can remember always being woken up by my dad and say, where are we going? Well, we're going to go skating. What do you mean we're going to go? Just my dad and I. That's it. No one else. There's no music, no video games. There's just lights on in the car, keeping, the
So you
parking lot
just did
open.
it. Like what were you thinking at that point?
I mean, I did it, but I hated it. I really hated it. And so like this developed this, and I love my father deeply. We have an amazing relationship, but there was this like overreaching catalyst that was actually happening around this like resentment towards like I just wanted to quit. I didn't want to do this anymore. I'm 12 years old. Who wants to wake up at 3:30? I don't want to wake up 3:30 in the morning today, right?
Sure.
So like back then it was really challenging. So when I tried to quit, my father made it very, 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 very difficult. And not because he was like, no, you're not quitting. He was like, show me and tell me the reason why you want to quit. Tell me, show me, like actually talk me through. And being someone where oftentimes we only want the love and affection and approval of our father or mother, whoever in our life is that we're seeking from, we don't want to let them down. So that was started embedding itself at an early age of, I don't want to let people down. I don't want to let my father down. I don't want to let the fans down, my coaches down, my teammates down, my girlfriend down, my friends down. I always want to deliver. When the time is right, I want to deliver. It's a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
And yeah.
All right, so he asked you why, you explain why you want to quit. So what on earth did you say? Like obviously it wasn't good enough. So you try something, but then you felt like, did he give you guilt? So you
No,
felt like, oh great, I'm going to let him down.
Yeah, no, it didn't work. It didn't work at all. Yeah,
So
I
what?
mean, I don't remember what I said specifically, but
Okay.
when I was
And so
12.
with other things though, growing up, there was this I've got to be the best at everything that I do. So it's interesting because it feels to me like with an athlete like you, like it feels like everything has to be totally focused on practice and sport and everything that you're doing in that one area that you can't even really you don't have time to entertain the other things. But if he was like that with everything in life, like were you trying to really kick butt in every area of your life?
He thought that I had the capability to be exceptional in all areas:
Uh-huh.
acting, choir, school, sport, like you name it, everything,
Everything.
communication, everything. And I wasn't perfect at any of those things. I wasn't great at most of those things, but he
Mm-hmm.
believed it. And that was a benefit, right? I started to believe it at certain
Of
times
course.
too. And but I just remember like there was a couple of like these like gifted programs that my dad had me enrolled into. You had to take this like competency test to enter. And like I like went through this test. I didn't know anything in there. I was like, this is crazy. I just started like circling stuff, just going through like randomly, like, maybe I can get like 30% of these right. That seems like it's pretty good. Um, obviously failing like completely because like that's like what are the odds of you getting that right? And so what did he do? He just made me take the test again. He rolled
Oh,
again
get
and
out of
rolled again
here.
and rolled again until I actually got in. Uh, so that's like the persistence that my dad has and the consistency of effort. That's all that he knew. And he did, what's beautiful is that my father actually did deeply believe in my capabilities and my potential when I didn't. And that was really powerful. He could see something. And what's really interesting, which is even more compelling, is I actually did perform eventually. So he was right. Now, it went through a lot in order to draw that out of me, but it shows that the human spirit, even at a young age, is remarkably adaptable and can really do things that maybe even though we weren't genetically designed to do, and everyone's got their strengths, right? Like I think I was designed for sport, like inherently. Like I think I was not like better than everybody else, but like my ability to just be involved in sports in a wholesome environment was like a real skill set. Um, and I think he saw that. He saw my ability to adapt to environments really well, but he wanted me to be pushed. And so that was a young age. I made my first team when I was 14 years old. I moved away from home to upstate New York and Lake Placid when I was 14, like away from my dad, living in the dormitory environment. That's like big changes, right? And so I was always like chasing. I made my first team at the age of 14. And so I couldn't go out drinking or having a drink with someone for like 7 more years, even though collectively I was still the captain of the team by performance. That's a weird situation. I had braces, right? Like I'm just a kid. I'm just a kid leading a team of men who's like 30, 35 years old. And I can't even hang out with them after the banquet. It's a very weird
That
situation,
is
if you can
so
imagine.
weird. So
Weird. And I'm traveling to like 80 plus countries around the world. And you have a kid who's like literally leading the team. because of his performances. And so that
Oh,
had his other implications, right, down the line in my life.
all right. So what were the
Yeah.
implications of that? That's a whole other set of things.
I think, like you have the invincibility complex, right? Where you feel like anything can be done. And so on the other flip side of that is like this, when you do perform, it's exceptional. It feels really, really good. But when you don't, you have this psychological barrier to where it's so difficult to deal with the trauma of not being or showing up to your fullest. Not in the performance, but uh, it's like this. You never want to give 100% because you're afraid of your 100%, you all out in all of its vulnerability is just not good enough. And then dealing with that. But by the way, that's like totally cool. Like that's life, right? We do things sometimes and it's not in our favor and we have to surrender to that outcome. I was not willing to do that. I was not willing to go 100%. So I started only trying 85%, 80%. And then if I didn't perform and didn't do well, effectively I was self-sabotaging. So I could subconsciously tell myself, well, it's fine. And next time, if you try a little bit harder, you probably could have done a little bit better. Oh, if you didn't wait so long in the race to make that pass, maybe you would have actually made the qualifying round. You see that pattern of what
Mm-hmm.
happens there? It's very dangerous, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so when I went through that process, this showed up when I was 14. I was number one in the US. And the following year, I was number 16. I was dead last at the Olympic trials. My father had seen that situation, and he was very unhappy about my efforts that year. Not because I didn't make the team, but more because he saw the habitual pattern that was actually being created, and he knew that unless he was able to shock the system, so to speak, I potentially had a pattern of doing that often. And so he only did what I think he knew what to do, which was very tough love. Is he took me from from upstate New York all the way to outside of Seattle, about 3.5 hours, to a cabin that we would go to during the holidays. And he drops me off and says, "You're going to be here alone for as long as it takes for you to understand and choose which direction in life that you want to go down. I don't want you to participate in sport unless you fully dedicate yourself. So whether it's academics, whether it's a different sport, whether it's this sport, I want you to have some deep reflection and thought around how you want to go through your life." And so at the age of 15, I was there alone for like 9 days in this cabin. There's like no one there, by the way. Like there's like literally, this is where people get sent as a part of the witness protection program. Like there's just no one there. It's beautiful. Don't get me wrong. Like I want to go there this winter because it's like so serene and it's just, it's like fresh and crisp and rains every day. It's very lush, but there, at the age of 15, like you want friends and video games and TV, and there's no Instagram or Snapchat or Zoom or just nothing. It's just literally
Huh.
me and nature. And he drops me off there and he goes back home. Um, yeah.
And so what was it like? What did you do? Were you freaked out?
Um, I was freaked out, but I also was like, was angry at my father, like basically abandoning me. That's what I thought, at least. What I didn't know was the pain that he had by doing this. Like he was really scared, right? I'm the only child.
Uh-huh.
So he just didn't know what to do. And he's like, he had to go back and work and he had to make money. But, I remember, many of his clients were telling him, my dad cuts hair. He owns a hair salon in Seattle.
Oh, okay.
And so he's telling his clients what he did. And his clients were like, what you did, what to your son? This is insane.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yuki, you can't do that to him. And my dad held firm. And I think he knew. My dad has this unique, uncanny ability to just know certain things. And throughout my process, I became very introspective. I was very inquisitive of like, why am I here? What am I doing? What's important to me in my life? And like, how do I align better? Like, do I want to do this again, the speed skating thing? And, I'll spare you like all the details, but effectively on the 9th day, I did call my dad from the payphone. And I told him that back we had payphones. And I told him that I wanted to come back home and that I had made a decision. And he doesn't ask me what the decision was. He just comes and picks me up. And he picks me up, and on the 3-hour drive home, I tell him that I was gonna try this, Olympic path one more time. And this time it was going to be different. Why is it going to be different, Apollo? Well, I'm going to actually give 100%. I'm really going to give my all. So I go back to Lake Placid. I trained to make the world team, which was held 2 months after the Winter Olympics in Nagano, Japan were. And I made the last alternate spot on the team, which means I wouldn't skate any individual races. I would just go on the trip. I was like a bag handler, basically, for the team.
Yeah.
If like two people got hurt, I then would skate a race.
Uh-huh.
It's very unlikely. And so I went on this trip, and when I was there, I had taken a little note, journal. I was writing down what I wanted to do, and I made a promise to myself, and I said that when you go back home to Seattle, you are after the season's over, you are not going to call your friends, you are not going to hang out with the same kind of destructive crew that you were with before. Instead, you are going to hone your craft alone in solitude, and you're not going to tell anyone. You're going to study, you're going to finish your school stuff, you're going to bike in the morning, and in the afternoon, you're going to run, or you're going to do inline skating or some other form of training. And so for 3.5 months, that's all I did. I was obsessed. Every day for 2.5 hours, I went on a bike in the basement of my house, stationary bike, and I watched skating tapes while I was biking. And I religiously watched it. Like I knew I had all these tapes from all these skating competitions, and I watched every single athlete who I thought had exceptional ability. And what I found was that the hundreds of hours of watching this over the course of that year, I knew all of the athletes better than anybody else because I'd done the work. I was obsessed. It's all I cared about. I didn't have a life. I didn't have a girlfriend. I didn't do anything. I was just, and then I went back to the training center in Colorado Springs, and I was in unbelievable shape, and everyone knew. They're like, "Oh, this is a changed kid." Now, again, my career was like this, right? It was always like up and down, but the light switch went on, and at a very young age for me was at 15. And by the way, it went on and off at various other times in my career. I've always been able to turn it back on. Mm-hmm. And so what that means is like all of us have this. A man or a woman or whatever on fire, you can actually achieve things that seemingly are impossible. And it doesn't mean, you weren't born for something. But I'm just such a fundamental believer in the psychology of finding where that switch is. And it's hard. It's not easy, right? A lot of times we're operating out of these states of fears of failure, and sometimes not out of joy and fulfillment and authenticity or whatever it is. But that's life. And I think the more that we can inform ourselves around why we are behaving and operating in a specific pattern or way, the better decisions that we make, the more that we are authentic with ourselves, the more self-acceptance we have. And through that self-acceptance, we then can say, yes, I am imperfect. I'm imperfect. I've got all kinds of mistakes and insecurities and self-doubts and whatever those things are. But the reality is I don't have to, and I accept myself for that person. I don't have to remain that person. I can begin to slowly start changing. And that is my quest, because I know that I can be better. I know that I can be better to people. I know that I can be better to myself and to my family. And that's how I came up with these 5 golden principles that I write about extensively in the book.
Yeah. So, okay. So first of all, it worked. Your dad knew what he was doing, even though he was nervous. I feel like if I were him, I might have like camped out like a little bit, even though there was nothing around you. I would have found a tree or something like that, at least to go and see and make sure that you're okay.
Yeah.
I guess
Yeah.
he
No,
didn't do that.
he did not do well. And also, like, to give you more context, like growing up in a single parent household since I was very, very young, I was very used to like operating on my own. My dad was working all the time, right? Mm-hmm. So I was like the very atypical kid who the parent is working to provide for the family. We didn't have a lot of money, so my dad had to work all day, every day. And so I learned how to cook by myself. I learned how to do all those things.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So self-sufficient, right? He could relax a little bit more and you could. Those are all good things too. Those are things I'm sure that helped you as well, that you grew up like that. So self-sufficient and independent. Okay. So all of these things that you know now, like I can hear all the things that you're saying, and they all are, yes, absolutely, very insightful. So, but you didn't always have these insights. So there was a certain point, I'm guessing, where you started to figure yourself out in this way, look back, and then after that applied it to all of the human experience or whatever. So how did you figure these things out? Was this after you retired that you were like, okay, I have to figure myself out, and then that's the path that you took? Or like, how did you figure this out yourself out?
It, it was a bit of both during my career as an athlete and after. I, I do believe that after I had retired, I was able to articulate behaviors and activities that I was doing that maybe if you had asked me 10 years ago, I wouldn't be able to describe in the way that I do today. I wouldn't know, what the journey of 1,000 miles starts from beneath your feet from Lao Tzu, what that means. That's the first quote in my book, right? As we begin a transformation, I wasn't really sure what the transformation was going to be like for me in 2010, like nearly almost like 12 years ago, right? Like I didn't know what that was, but it's been long and arduous and also completely different than I could ever have possibly written as a script. And so I think that like the life gives you these unique learning moments and times where you can choose to participate in a way that is helpful and healthy to your psychology of how you interact with this world. And so, I learned very early from sport itself the stoicism components of learning how to focus on what you can control and surrendering to that which you cannot. It's really hard to do, especially for people who are micromanagers or like complete control.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard because we always feel like we can change something or do something, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's innate nature. But there's a sense of freedom that comes from not being handcuffed to that, if that makes sense, right?
Sure,
Where you can
of course.
say, I'm going to take the weight vest off. I'm going to do everything that I possibly can. And that which I cannot, it's okay. It will be and it will land where it goes. That is incredibly satisfying when you can get to that stage. It took me a long time to do that.
So are you saying it was just time that helped you figure all these things out, or were you doing things? Were you reading books? Were you talking to a therapist? Were you, talking to your dad or your girlfriend or anything? What was going on that you figured that you really did this?
I was doing all of those things plus 10 others, right? I was
Okay.
I was
Like
really
what?
interested in I was really interested in deep work, like why Apollo do you behave the way that you do? Why do you have a pattern or a self sabotage mentality when things seemingly are going really well? Why do you do certain things to hold yourself back? Why do you create obstacles that don't need to be there? And so all these questions I would have, right? Like what's happening, and then also like deeply understanding around these epiphanies of when I'm in a state of gratitude and simplicity. It's like it's the probably the most amazing feeling on the planet. I'm not sad. I'm not angry. I'm just am. I'm just here. I'm just present. Um, that's the number one principle, by the way. The second principle would be giving, right? And like selflessly, both giving our time, our resources to others, and it just helps us, I think, transcend the call it the limitations of of our egos, right? That our egos are always constantly imposing. Um, Grit is number three, and grit is one of those things where when we develop the mental stamina, resilience, and toughness to persevere through difficult challenges, we grow stronger, right? A good timber does not grow with ease. The stronger wind, the stronger trees. It's the reason why I have calluses on my hand. Your body builds up over time. And it's with this grit mentality that's really, really required. Um, Something that I knew that I had to change when I retired was this number four on my list. And the number four is gearing up. And gearing up effectively means preparing ourselves mentally and physically to perform our best. And what does that mean, right? So the challenge ahead, as we know, is never easy, but we can level up our expectations and perform our best if we prepare for them, right? So gearing up our expectations for ourselves, routines in the morning, routines in the evening, we need to change some things, knowing that if I want to set myself to a higher standard, then I have to set myself to a higher standard. And that can be still in the way that I treat myself. It can be the way that I perform. It could be my consistency. Those things are really important, I think, as a whole. Um, sorry, I was losing my light here a bit. It's a little bit
Oh,
better.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, I was gonna say,
Uh,
I thought you're losing your train of thought. It was like you're about to hit number five, I
no, no,
think.
no, 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 no. I have. I just was changing my brightness. And the
Okay.
last one is go. Super self-explanatory, right? Like we learn a lot by doing, by taking our shot, by diving in head first, and by actually doing and having a go at it. So we realize quite often that failure wasn't what we actually thought it was. And we can then begin to make a positive habit of picking ourselves back up, dusting ourselves back off, and then getting back into the game by going and doing it. So I was someone that suffered deeply from paralysis by perfectionism in a sense, right? Where I never wanted to unveil my curtain until it was perfect. The problem was it never was perfect.
Hmm.
Never was perfect. And I would just stay behind the curtain. No one ever saw my canvas that I was painting on the entire time. And you never want to do that. So that thing that you want to do may or not be perfect in the first time around, but with practice and time and energy, you can really start to display that time and time again. So yeah, I think those things are really important. Really important, at least for me.
Right, right. So you figured these things out, you put them on paper, and now you can share them with the world, which is nice. Which is certainly something else. You're giving a gift again. So you gave a gift all the years that you were competing, right? Because people, I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure, were super inspired, love to watch you, right? And then this is just a totally different way of doing it, but you're doing in a way the same thing. You're giving.
I'm giving,
Yeah.
and that's the purpose, right? Is regardless of your own reinvention, your career, your path, what you're going through in your life, know that there on the other side of this is a really beautiful outcome, and the outcome may not be exactly what you want it to be, but it'll be something special, and you can learn and yearn from those life lessons and apply them in a way that gives you self fulfillment, that gives you radical authenticity of conversation with yourself. And that's the goal, is kind of less long-term pain, and instead creating a life, I think, for yourself that is at least perceptually something more aligned with what you believe to be your purpose. And
Hmm.
that only goes if you're asking yourself, like, what do I want from this world or this universe or this earth, and what do I think those things want from me? Are they in alignment? Right? Do I feel that, and if you're religious, do I feel that God has chosen me to do this, and is this what I want for myself? Or you can ask, if what do I want from the universe? What do I think the universe or life wants from me? I ask myself that often.
Hmm.
Often.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so you're a reflective person. It sounds like you always were a reflective person, but now even more so, maybe putting it all together.
Way more so today.
Yeah, yeah. So let's talk about the Olympics a little bit about what don't people know? Like you were saying behind the curtain before. So
Mhm.
what's the image that people have of what it's like or what it was like to be you versus what was really going on? Like what are some of the things that surprise people that you find now if you talk about it, people are like, "What?"
Hmm. I would say some of the things that people don't know are, I mean, just the severe, like legitimate trauma that occurs when people go through their Olympic career. It's real. Like the reality is there's like a ton of trauma associated with going through the Olympic Games, and it's because you put aside everything in your life, right? You are only focusing on the result because the external mechanisms tell you we will not celebrate you unless you win. If you lose, you are a failure. You failed at the Olympic Games. It is so hard to make an Olympic team. It is incredibly hard to go and compete on the world stage. It's hard to do all these things. And so there's lots of joy that can be derived from that. I think that the training is absurd in the Olympic Games. Professional athletes train incredibly hard. Uh, I just have seen Olympic athletes. It's just a different level. It's a life. It is a life committed. It is not one game or one match or one year. It is a full on. Most of these athletes don't do anything else for sometimes well over a decade
Yeah.
for a chance to go on the ice and race for 40 seconds long, in which the difference between first and fourth are like two finger snaps. Four people have just crossed the finish line. And so when you think about it in that context, your psychology every day, every minute of every training session, every recovery, every decision is centered around, if my gold versus being off the podium is separated by 4 hundredths of a second, am I willing to go do this or this or this on that weekend? And you wonder when you get to the games. I'm telling you, everyone says the same thing. I wish I had another couple of months of training left.
Oh, really?
We always think this. Like we think
Oh.
like, I mean, look, imagine training for 12 years and now is your moment and you're saying, I wish I had like another 2 months of like training. I could perfect it a little bit better, right? And like no, this is everyone. You're there. You can't change anything, right? So sorry. Should I turn the light on? It's so dark in here.
I feel like I can still see you lit up
Okay, I feel like
very
a
well.
ghost.
So it's actually
Okay.
like maybe a little ghost-like, but at least like I could totally see you. If you want to put a light on, you can, but if you'd rather keep it kind of private
I'm
with your
okay.
people.
I just, I don't want to disrupt what your
I
thing
think
is.
it's
Yeah.
fine. I think it's fine because
Okay.
we're gonna tighten in anyway on probably on our faces mostly, so it
All
should
right.
be
All right.
fine.
Okay.
But thank you for being concerned about it. I appreciate
Sure.
that.
Sure.
So yeah, that's like you could never feel like you've done enough. So what about tell me what you think about the whole mental health situation with the Olympics and like what they are doing or not doing. I mean, it's been in the news a lot lately. I know you were on the documentary. So what are your thoughts on that?
My thoughts are the documentary is accurate. There has not been a lot of resources for athletes. It's not been a part of the business plan. If you think about the Olympic Games as a business, not internationally, but even internationally, but especially in the US, the business is go and get as many medals as possible so that sponsors want to be a part of the Olympic movement
Mm-hmm.
and harness the power of those Olympic rings. And that is the model. No medals, no sponsors. So if that is the priority, you do whatever it is that you need to do to be at your best. And if you don't, then you're not going to be celebrated. So you have feelings outside of the sport. Too bad. It's a non-starter, not a conversation. Oh, you don't feel like doing this today? Too bad. Don't want to hear it. You're here for a job. And it's not really a job though. We're not paid exceptionally very well. We're like in debt $35,000 a year as an Olympic athlete. That's another thing that people don't realize is like the money, like with the exception of those who go and win and get celebrated by NBC, like 99% of Olympic athletes when they retire are like in debt, like deeply.
In
Um,
debt, deep
yeah,
debt.
yeah,
That's what is
yeah,
an
deeply.
average of 35,000 a year that they
Yeah,
take
on
on.
average. Yeah, because you're not making money, right? So if you compound this over a 10-year period, the opportunity cost of going to school, of having a job, getting an internship, and you don't
Yeah.
perform, like I don't know, like when you retire and you want to go work for a bank or be an entrepreneur, you're competing against someone who's 10 years younger than you,
Yeah.
literally. Like you are, anyway, that's the reality.
Right. So
That's the
you're in a
choice that we
worse
make.
place than you started, actually. Like,
In a certain area. Now, in the other areas, are Olympic athletes contain attributes that most people on the planet do not have because of the physical and mental training that is done over that period of time. What we don't realize is harnessing the power of those attributes and providing yourself the guardrails again that you once had from your team in order to be your best. So that was the coaches and your team and the structure and the training program and the Olympic committee. When you retire, those go flat. And now you're kind of just jumping all over the place. So when you retire, finding your 5 personal board of directors to help guide you in the direction that you want to go, because we have the work ethic, the discipline, the relentless drive, the
yeah.
being coachable is really good,
Hmm.
the teamwork component of being creative and having unification with our belief systems, of going above and beyond, of not complaining. Like all these things are like inherently
Yeah,
Olympic.
those are they're invaluable really to any
Yeah.
company or whoever needs to hire somebody. Like it's kind of weird to think about the fact that everybody's not being scooped up right
Yeah.
after to help in some way because of all
They're
those
starting.
attributes.
They're starting. And hopefully this documentary and some of the work that I have done will help with that, right? I think, look, when I joined Tribe Capital, um, I think that they saw qualities in me that were unique to maybe someone else. Yes, I don't have the most technical knowledge of the industry. I don't have a venture capital background, but I am authentic. I'm hardworking. I'm loyal. I'm willing to do the work, and I'm coachable.
Hmm.
And I will always show up and grind. Like this is, and I enjoy the grind. It's a part of my psychology. I love it, and I love working with teams. I love working with my friends. I love working with my colleagues to say like, hey, we're struggling together. That's a good feeling, right? When you're doing it, it's hard when you're alone, right? Because you feel
Hmm.
like you're alone. I've been in that path too. So I think that many of us, even people that have their own reinventions happening in their life, you have attributes in you that maybe you haven't even recognized yet. Think about it like this. You are a diamond, beautiful diamond, and you've spent your whole life polishing the top surface of that diamond. I see you have a ring there, right? So the top of that diamond, okay, is where you spend most of your time looking. That's been your identity. What you fail to realize is there's all different types of facets on that diamond. And it's up to you as the participant in this world of life to polish and hone and get those other facets ready. That's your natural curiosity. So be relentlessly curious. Do not be afraid of failure. And if you are, use the fear of failure as a catalyst to spark the energy moving forward. And that's what we have to do, to be relentlessly curious, to explore these different areas of our life that maybe we were pigeonholing before because we were living by the identity of what was on that business card.
So interesting. I feel like some Olympic athletes, retired Olympic athletes, should get together and like create new businesses together, all of them, because of all of these attributes that we're talking about. You guys would have very successful companies, I think.
Yeah.
Another question about the behind the scenes of the Olympics. So you were also on the bidding committee, right?
Yeah, for Los Angeles 2028 and also for the 2030 games in Salt Lake City. So yeah, both of those
Okay,
back to
so
back.
what's that like? I mean, what do people not know about that? Because you hear about it a little
Oof,
bit in the news and whatever, but
yeah. So that's a hard process. So we communicate with the local constituents and representatives of the governments in Utah, Salt Lake City, Park City, Los Angeles proper, around how and why we would like to bid to host an Olympic Games in that particular city. It's a big undertaking. It's very expensive. Lots and lots of questions have to be answered and asked. And so my role is to give perspective on the games that I've experienced in the past, the cities that perhaps optically that have done it well. What can we avoid? How do we have a more modernized, sustainable, longevity focused experience for not only the athletes and the world who's there competing for that month in that particular city, but for the local community that is undertaking that stress of preparing for an Olympic Games? The economic downturn or uptick is and can be impacted by the Olympic Games being held there. So there's all, I was on a call this morning about that, right? There's conversations around what type of fan experiences can we have that are unique? How do we tap into the local culture here to understand what is it about the suburbs of New York that people don't know? How do we bring that to life so that the people of those communities are engaged and the young people can see and sense the life lessons throughout the Olympic Games? Because that's what the Olympics is it shows you that impossible is nothing. It shows you the story of representation across anything. And it shows you the human element to go above and beyond what we thought was possible. And it shows you at the end of the day that these people are still human and they're just like you and I, and they happen to do something obsessively for years and putting it all on display. It's great to celebrate that.
yeah, cool, cool. So that must be interesting too. Tell me about fame in your experience with it. Like you became famous pretty quickly, I imagine. I mean, what's your experience with it? Do you like it? Do you hate it? A little bit of both?
Um, I used to hate it. It's been a long time since I've been in the spotlight. So it's fine. I think I use fame differently today than before. Today, I'm happy to use it to really drive messaging that I think is important in today's society. So reinvention, adaptation to an uncertain and volatile world, and hopefully give some insights into how I think about things, and hopefully those things are helpful to people as we move on. When I was younger, I hated being in the glass bowl. It was frustrating. It was hard. I just wanted to hide. Every time I had to travel, I was wearing a hat or glasses. It just was uncomfortable. I just wanted to be a dude, you
Right.
know, in line like everyone else, trying to get on the plane, you know, get my little bag of peanuts and just like chill.
So what was
Yeah.
it? Was it fans or was it like photographers, paparazzi? Like, who
It
was
was all of
the
it. It was all of it. I mean, it was all of it. No, like that's why, yeah, I mean, it was all of it. I think fame is it's a weird thing. It is so weird. Um, it's still weird to this day. I mean, every meeting that I've had today and yesterday and this whole year, I never really mentioned what I did before. Say, oh, Paul, tell us about your background, how you got on, how you got involved in the investment world. And say, oh, like in my previous life, I was an athlete for a long time, and then I just go into the next thing. And then a couple times, you're like, whoa, 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 what do you mean? You're just an athlete, right? Some people they know kind of my background and story. But I just
Right.
prefer to gloss over those things because it feels so distant in the past. Now, again, I
Mhm.
take those attributes and life lessons with me, but fame is just one of those weird things. It can, I don't know. Hopefully, it's very humbling to people, and they use it in the right, proper, positive perspective. But it's dangerous. Fame is it could be. I can see how it's addicting. I can see how you play the external game of the comparative analysis game. It's tough.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I like to ask that question a lot because the name of the show obviously is Really Famous. So the point of it is that the people who I have on the show, they're famous, but I really like to get to know the real person, right? So it's not about, oh, you're celebrating fame or whatever, but everybody just happens to be. So I do like to ask that question, and it is very interesting what everybody's experience is with it. And of course, it varies based on the person and
Mhm.
their experiences, but yeah, it can be both. Like I could see where with you, it's a positive in the sense that you can use it now to do these things and to help people, but at the same time it's like you're saying, it could be dangerous. And at the time, I'm sure you didn't like it, but what you said was so interesting. So some people don't know what your history is, like when they hear your name or they read your name, they don't recognize it.
I have a lot of calls with very young founders. So,
Oh.
like, Kara, you forget, like, I'm not old, but in February 2022, it's my 20th anniversary of my first Olympic Games.
Okay.
Okay. Some of these kids are 25 years old, right?
Right.
They don't know, they don't remember, they don't know me. They didn't watch the games. Like when I say that I was born in the early 80s, they're like, what? The early 80s? What the hell was that? Like, did you guys have cars back then? It's like,
Right. So it's all
what?
younger people then, you're saying, like it's that's who
Not
when.
all, but a lot of people are very young. Yeah. And then I talk to people from all over the world that maybe just don't watch speed skating,
Right.
right? Or Dancing with Stars, or whatever, right? So, yeah,
Yeah. Oh, Dancing with the Stars. That's right. I've had a few people on the show who are on that too. So
nice.
that's right. So what was that whole situation like for you?
That
I
was
mean,
also very weird. It was also very strange. But it was really fun. Julianne Hough and I became very good friends. We won the
uh-huh.
show. It was awesome. It taught me a side of my personality that I didn't know existed, and it forced me to bring that out to show people.
So I bet also though that propelled you in terms of being recognized. Even were you surprised? Did that give you a big bump that you didn't even
It,
expect?
it was yeah, it was scary. I couldn't go anywhere, anywhere. I mean, I couldn't go anywhere. I did get some like free cheesesteaks a couple of times though, so that was pretty good. In the
So
East
well,
Coast.
well worth it. Yeah, it's funny. I think I do know some kids who are like in their early 20s who watch that even, so maybe they
Yeah,
would have known you. But it was earlier, it's an earlier season though.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It
Well,
was it
that's
was
so
really
interesting. And it's like the ups and the downs I can only imagine. And so when you meet somebody, you don't assume they know anything about you. You kind of assume that they don't. Is that your approach?
I assume they don't. I assume they don't. Um, yeah, I kind of prefer it that way.
Uh-huh.
I don't want to cloud the conversation too much. Sometimes it's just very apparent they know because like sometimes people are just they're very smiley, you know, when they
Oh,
have
right.
conversations. So they know. They're like, hey, I just got to tell you, like, this is an amazing conversation. Um, yeah.
Okay, so my question that I like to ask everybody is number one, what is the image that people tend to have of you? And number two, how is it different from who you really are?
Wow. I think people have this image of me that it's all I do is win. Everything I touch turns to gold. I think that's a very common misconception, and that it's been somewhat easy because everything I do seems successful. And it's not true. I have had countless failures and missteps and shortcomings, and all of those make me who I am today, and I'm deeply grateful for them. And they've been hard lessons, by the way. Things that I people don't know about me is that I deeply care about uh, our country and our world and how we interact. I really care about it. A lot of people are angry and sad and confused, and I just feel that there's pain that's there, and hopefully we can help alleviate that pain and get people on the right track. So that's a real passion of mine. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to give you a quick follow-up to that, which is, who is Apollo Ono?
I am someone who is kind. I believe I'm someone who um, has vulnerability and empathy, is an incredibly hard worker. I'm loyal. Um, I'm optimistic and happy, and I am just like everyone else.
I appreciate that. Thank you for sharing. Great meeting you.
Thank you, Kat. Great meeting you. Bye bye.
That was Apollo Ono. Drop a comment about this video. I'd love to know what you think about it, what you think about Apollo, what do you think about our talk, anything. And make sure you subscribe to Really Famous. Tap on that subscribe button and then the notifications bell so you know every time I drop a new video, which is usually once or twice a week. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.